Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to see you all here. Always really nice to see a community forming, especially at La Cápsula. And we would start right away with the presentation of the project Entre-rios with Dr. Lisa Blackmore, Emilio Chapela. They have a very interdisciplinary practice and research-based project in England, Colombia, Peru, Mexico, many countries. Welcome very much to Zurich.
Thanks for the invitation. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and I'll start by sharing with you to share with you an artwork I did that it's sort of like a journey through a river, and I think it sort of establishes a starting point in our discussion and to go into what we do in Entre Rios. You can see the screen now.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay, thank you. So that's a work as it was installed in the museum. But now I will play the video, and I will talk while here. I hope you can see the video now. And okay, so I will show you a fragment of a work I did in 2019 called Usumacinta, which is a 5-channel immersive video installation that deals with the river's various velocities, currents, sediments, and other form of movements in the Usumacinta River in Mexico. However, while you watch it, I will tell you the story of how I took on that journey along the forces of the river. To do the work, I attached 5 cameras along a flexible plastic tube articulated in resemblance of a snake and developed for the currents to take it. The cameras, which were also equipped with underwater microphones, pick up video and sound as they moved in collaboration with the river, which allowed me to see the emerging qualities of the collaboration. David, a boat driver who knew the river very well, guided us to a safe place where we could release the cameras in a small crystalline tributary river a few hundred meters before reaching to the Usumacinta, and from where we could swim behind the cameras in case they got stuck or lost when reaching the deep and sediment-filled waters of the Usumacinta rivers. We floated calmly behind the cameras until the force of the water felt strong. I remember Castelli's mathematical conjectures on the speed of a flowing river, as well as Prigoghine's and Stenger ideas related to turbulence. When the river bed becomes narrower, the somehow dispersed and disordered molecules of water are forced to increase their speed and arrange in an orderly but turbulent manner. The water is deviated into a turbulent flow, to use the words of Lucretius. But they do it in response to other entities and qualities like topography, pressure, and temperature. When looking at the video, it's possible to see the water particles as they change speed and suffer the pressure when the river is narrow. I could feel the pressure in my body too. The river pulled me. I felt my body resisting the turbulence, almost like an instinct of survival. I was tense. I heard David saying that I had to let myself go. You must flow, he said. I thought about giving up and accelerating, about becoming liquid and turbulent, or permeable. Our bodies are mostly water, explains Astrida Neymanis. She brings this forward to recognize in water common spaces and shared matter where agency is distributed. It took us around 20 minutes to reach the end of the small river, where a boat was waiting for us. I had to recover the cameras just before reaching the strong currents in the main river. However, I wanted to submerge the cameras in rapid waters and vortexes. David agreed to help us do that, but we could not swim along. I thought about attaching a cable to the snake-looking artifact in case we lost it. But David stopped me right away and explained to me that if I used the cable, the cameras would submerge to the bottom of the river due to its tension, risking them to tangle with something. It is a similar situation to what makes a kite fly, he explained. Instead, he suggested letting the cameras flow freely in the river and assured me that we could fasten a buoy, a plastic bottle, to the artifact and follow the cameras with the boat. I decided to trust him. Once more, to collaborate, I was asked to renounce control of the situation. I needed to better understand the river, to be attentive and responsive to the situation. But that comes with time and experience, which was something that David was willing to share with us. In doing this artwork, I learned about how trust can be distributed in more than human entanglements, especially with the river and David, who was already attuned with the Usumacinta. Collaborations are about listening and being attentive and responsive. We followed the cameras as they moved rapidly down the river. To my surprise, the brown-colored images from the river looked more abstract, even when the cameras were carried with more strength. The sediments of the river made the images look homogeneous. Paradoxically, they appear quieter than the turbulent streams produced in the tributary river. Hence the saying that the river is deeper and more dangerous where it appears calmer. Okay, and so that was the project, and we'll now talk a little bit about Entre-rios.
Okay, thanks for the invitation to be here today virtually and to share with you part of the backstory of this project as well. Emilio and I have been collaborating since I think late 2019 perhaps, and then Diego Chocano, who's a co-curator of a digital phase of the project, came on board as well in 2020. But before this also the project had different iterations from 2018. So I just want to tell you a bit about that. And then we're going to show you specific sections of the digital platform. So Entre-rios is a project that is at least institutionally based at the University of Essex in the UK. But the way that we work places us between entre many geographies, histories, bodies of water and disciplines that attend to them. And right now, because of the pandemic, along with so many other people, our activities are also defined by cohabitation between physical places and the modes of living that unfold in virtual settings such as this. So we're a network of artists, researchers from the arts and from other fields, and active communities who since 2018 have been running projects that seek to create interdisciplinary and public spaces to feel, think, and respond to the lives of bodies of water. We're focused in and on Latin America, but we seek to diffract those rivers to other spaces and times where we can find mirrorings, contrasts, or resonances of shared challenges, conflicts, and cultures that emerge out of human relations to and through water. The global dominance of industrial and urban modernity as a paradigm of development and the colonial capitalist mechanisms that have underpinned it over its longue durée urge us to connect our rivers across shared geohistories. If you've read Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, you'll remember it begins with a hydroscape of the Thames River as a pulsing highway for extractive colonial endeavours that play out in Africa. What seems far away when we're rooted in a political ecological geohistory is never actually that remote. The same applies to our digital community, which has thrived in COVID Zoom space, allowing us to foster relations of empathy, care, and collaboration with people we've never actually met in person in many cases. So our emphasis is on asking for the sustainability of hydrological cycles and for the well-being of all the lives that cohabit immersed in them. We depart from the concept of interpermeation that Astrida Naimanis discusses in her book, Bodies of Water, Post-Human Feminist Phenomenology. This term names the way in which we live on a blue planet whose 2/3 water coverage is reflected in the same fact that our bodies are around 60% water. Thus, she argues, being is constituted by an ontologics of amniotics. We mammals start life in the amnion, the watery setting inside our mothers. We are gestated by water and we continue to exist in it, permeated by and permeating each other's fluids and flows. Western philosophy has enshrined the figure of the individual and privileged mind over matter. However, in reality, we live in interpermeation, cohabiting spaces of dynamic flows with bodies of water, rain clouds to gutters, bodily fluids to sewers, contaminated water to food products, and so on. So in the pandemic, we're perhaps learning to be more attentive to that porosity, but the present situation is also demonstrating to us that the same inequities and injustices that shape the world stop interpermeation approximating a hydrocommons, a place where water can be a common good and a common responsibility rather than a passive resource to be put to work for human profit, extracted, privatized, and defiled. The latter condition is exemplified by the liquid ecologies with which Entre-Rios interacts. After a century of fast-paced development, booms of mega dam building, privatization of water sources, and deficient sanitation infrastructure, many rivers are declared dead, or at best agonizing. Luis Camacho, a hydro engineer from the Universidad de los Andes in Bogotá, explained to us during one of our project meetings how the Bogotá River is so contaminated that its pulse is almost flatlining. It lacks oxygen to such an extent that in the short periods when it's not receiving industrial waste from tanneries, the river moves quickly to use the increase in oxygen to repair itself. Many lines of inquiry ramify from this setting and the stress factors that burden the environment. Entre-Rios' endeavors move between critical discussion, creative reclamation, and imaginative speculation. The ethos is to ask for the situated local and global factors that affect the lives of bodies of water, to engage in active reclamation of more critical and empathic relations to water, and to speculate about the ongoingness of our hydrological cycles. So ongoingness is that temporality that Donna Haraway posits as an alternative to the chronotype of progress that is inherent to the ecological impasse in which we find ourselves. So threaded through our research and the art practice of Entre-Rios collaborators are questions regarding the precarious lives of bodies of water at our present juncture. Which modes of worlding have justified dreams of progress that perpetuate the artificial separation of human and non-human lives? How do they manifest in infrastructure, imaginaries, discourses, ecologies? And if, following discussions of post-human performativity, we understand that matter matters, that discourse is not limited to representationalism of language or image, then in what forms do bodies of water articulate themselves? How do they make shape shift, materialize submerged voices, and become eloquent even in their silence? What happens when artists engage in, as Bruno Latour formulates it, alternative distributions of agency in times of the Anthropocene, negotiating aesthetic form with more than human actants? How close can we come to a state that Georges Didier Huberman has termed, talking about Giuseppe Pononi's work, being river? Can we get there? So Emilio in a moment is going to show you the projects that we produced together and with Diego and with a bunch of artists in Colombia, Peru, and Mexico to respond to the Bogotá, Rímac, and Usumacinta rivers. But before I hand over, I just want to show you some of our editorial and curatorial projects created pre and post-COVID as an invitation for you also to connect with us. So if we go to the Publicaciones del Páramo a la Represa, the first Entre-Rios project, which took place in 2019 in Santander, Colombia, featured an exhibition, a program of workshops, and a series of routes which brought together students, artists, researchers, and members of the public. And in this project, what we did was trace the region's hydrography from its highlands, its páramos, via its valleys, and down to a river that had been dammed to create a hydroelectric plant. And as we did this, we walked together, we swam together, we listened to bodies of water, we listened to each other, and we shared on these experiences, our impressions about the surrounding landscape. The anthropologist Tim Ingold talks about the importance of sensory immersion in the body as an instrument in knowledge formation through experience. Again, Western philosophy has sidelined the body, separating it from the mind and privileging the latter as a site of thought. we wanted to recenter bodily experience as a common ground that cultivates arts of attention to the environment, enabling a heightened sense of the interpermeations that we were talking about earlier. Those experiences that we had together in the field, along with the workshops with archaeologists, with artists, with curators, these were catalysts for responses by all of the project's participants, which we later shaped into this transdisciplinary book that you're looking at. And as you can see on the right-hand side, there's a whole river of words that flows vertically along with it, a sort of collective river voice that speaks of our experiences as a group. And there are other sections of the book where you get streams and streams of different rivers. And that intervention in all of the texts to create the sort of meta river was conceived by Teresa Mulet, a Venezuelan artist and designer, who designed this book, the visual identity for the project, and the next book that we are publishing, which is about to go to the printers. So Emilio, if you can go to Cuerpos Permeables. So we're in a week's time, so next Saturday, we inaugurate an actual in real life exhibition in Colombia with the artist Eulalia de Valdenegro, for which there is an accompanying, again, interdisciplinary publication produced in collaboration with the Instituto Humboldt, and that will also be available online as a PDF that you can download. But what I want to turn to now, again, just briefly before I hand back to Emilio, is one of the curatorial projects that came before this, so live streams, which together with Diego and Emilio, we worked on during March and April of this year. And it was a blended exhibition, both in the gallery here at the University of Essex and also on this bespoke website. So there were bits that bridged to those two spaces and bits that were only in physical or digital spaces. So in Staying with the Trouble, Donna Haraway writes, "Staying with the trouble requires learning to be truly present, not as a vanishing pivot between awful or Edenic pasts and apocalyptic or salvific futures, but as mortal critters entwined in myriad unfinished configurations of places, times, matters, and meanings." She goes on to write that the task is to become capable of response to our environments through more attuned cohabitation. And to respond, we first have to notice. So water occupies a somewhat contradictory place in public imaginaries, or at least some of them. It's ever present, and yet for that same reason, something that's taken for granted in contexts where access to it is generally supported by efficient infrastructure, sanitation systems, and at least in theory, legal structures that protect watercourses from levels of contamination that can cause ecological death. The waters inside us are perhaps similarly beyond and beneath our conscious perception. So we're 97.5% saline water and 2.5% fresh water. Our spinal cord and our brains are quenched by these rare fresh waters that flow through us. They pulsate through our bodies at a rate that we simply do not notice. Our hearts beat and our lungs expand and they contract at a rate that we can sense, but our not entirely hard skulls and the sutures that link their different bones throb at a rate of 6 beats per minute. It is very difficult to perceive that, to attend to it. So it's this that enables the waters to flow and take away toxins that build up in us. The lymph system similarly pumps inside us, retrieving toxins and flushing them out. I could go on, but this brief anatomy offers an idea of how liquid life is and how little we probably actually notice it. So what we did in live streams was place a particular focus on the body as a channel to cultivate attunement that started from a very intimate connection inside us and would hopefully grow outwards to connections to others and to bodies of water in the more than human hydrological system in a hydrocommons. And we worked really closely with the Peruvian artist Journée Tavarsi and commissioned her to make some new works for the show that emerged from the dynamics of our networks encounters through 2020 and from her earlier work exploring the hidden rivers of Sao Paulo. So Giannietta created 3 print artworks exhibited in the gallery and digitally on this site that you're looking at, which formulated 3 practical exercises to engage with liquid flows through movement and through breath. These draw on scientific principles such as homeostasis and the cycling of oxygen in respiratory process to bridge human and non-human life forms. So just as our organisms carry out autonomic processes of flow to maintain equilibrium, so too do rivers. bearing their pulsations and flow patterns, delving into their own material memories and seeking always to return to homeostatic balance and to repair the malaises that afflict them, such as the pollution caused by industrial and urban development. Journée, as well as these didactic exercises, also created 3 video tutorials that engaged, as she writes, the body world, a notion of the body based on her understanding, as she puts it, that we are not individuals, we are multitude, dynamic, open and interdependent with every part of the planet. The practices that Journée performs in these videos and that you can participate in as you watch them cultivate attention to this openness of our bodies, and thus raise by experiential means ethical questions of how we impact other bodies of water, how we notice each other, how we correspond to each other's watery bodies. So we also stage these as literal sympoietic exercises in a participatory performative setting of making with. During the exhibition's launch event, Journée led attendees, only present in Zoom spaces like this, in a series of practices to breathe and move together. So experiential participatory sympoiesis were thus the digital physical grounds that created a shared environment for the exhibition, no matter where we were connecting from. Breathing together is a form of community building, and exhibitions like books, like classrooms, are not means ends outputs of academic research or curatorial practice. They're a way of permeating the walls of galleries and university campuses to connect with others in knowledge communities, not so much in knowledge economies. So this, in a broader sense, is what motivates all of the work behind Entre-rios. And I'm going to hand over to Emilio, who's going to show you some of the projects that the artists we worked with in 2020 produced for the platform.
Hi, thanks, Lisa. Okay, with the arrival of the pandemic, and despite not being able to travel to the rivers, we commissioned a series of artists to work with 3 rivers, the Bogotá River in Colombia, the Rímac in Peru, and the Usumacinta in Mexico. We invited them to use Entre-rios as an open, process-based, and community-driven platform to think and produce work related to the bodies of water, even from a distance. Today, the platform keeps on flowing and exchanging. We invite you to navigate this project at entrerios.net, but I will go and explain on the various ways to do it. There has been an increasing interest in ecologies of water, fluidity, permeability, and shared commonalities in water. What Neymanis describes as hydrocommons. Entre-rios seeks to contribute to that discussion too. However, we feel challenged on how to approach these liquid ecologies. How do we deal with its motions? How to inhabit them? We feel troubled because as humans, our instinct, it seems, is to resist flow and to imagine an immobile world that we can master, as explains Bergson. We aim to challenge that inertia, a resistance to change by means of sensible attention, attuning, openness, and adaptation. We invite you to let go. Our homepage is in constant change and movement. Every time you open it, it will be different. All the projects are there, but they are not always visible in the landing page, as if the projects were swirling, advancing, submerging, and emerging. The next time you visit, things will be different. You are welcome to explore it in that way, from a total immersion, by taking a journée, flowing and following your interests. You can also look for the map at the bottom to engage in that way, with a geographical reference. However, we did not want to categorize and divide the projects by rivers, Usumacinta, River, Rímac, and Bogotá, or by the other rigid categories. First, because we plan to incorporate other rivers in the future, but most importantly, because we do not want to impose a curatorial, geographical, or political authority that would appear rigid and that would not suffice in attuning to the permeability and the mobility of the project. That is why we propose 4 ways to move through these projects: bodies of water, more than human assemblages, modes of inhabiting, and voices of the river. In the future, as the project grows, we expect to have others. More than categories that seek to delimitate or categorize, these themes can be understood as attractors in Latour's words. They are tools to better navigate the platform. They provide a starting point from where to move along and flow. They are cartographies that reveal the territories in new ways, while avoiding the instinct discussed before to look for artificial points of reference in preconceived categories. It is useful here to think about the one-of-a-kind classification system of Avi Warburg's library, made by himself, based on the idea on the good neighbor, a classified somehow subjectively and intuitively in themes that were close to each other. Warburg encouraged, in looking for a specific book, to browse the neighboring titles, as it was probable to find there something new. Entre-rios thematic attractors are not mutually exclusive, which means that projects overlay and overlap. These thematic attractors passed and flowed through each other, diffracted in the sense described by Karen Barad, where difference that matter can emerge. So the first one is bodies of water. I will go really briefly. These art projects explore the very matter of water, but always in relation with its capacities to relate to other things and in its potential to take various forms and rhythms, like turbulences, vortexes, laminar flows, evaporation, rain, atmospheric pressure, and weather. Bodies of water deals also with the human body and its capacity to flow and change. It deals also with the weight and resistance of objects when sinking or floating, with permeable membranes, sediments, mud, waste, and life. It traverses the micro and macro, as it can explore inside a single drop of water while considering the planet geologically or atmospherically. It also looks at precarity, as we are running out of fresh water, or water as capital, as salt, as pollution, as sickness. More than human assemblages is the second. More than human assemblages investigates how past, present, future are entangled in non-linear ways. It looks at the works of infrastructure and its close and, for most of times, pervasive relations to rivers, like dams, trains, roads, and other industrial activities that depend on rivers. It also looks at rivers as entities of navigation and as a source of water for human consumption and agriculture. Water moves downstream towards the future, increasing its entropy, while other things move in the opposite direction, such as the robalo, a fish, the salmon, or the exercise of history, which all swim upstream, oriented by its memory. Progress, on the other hand, tries to get ahead, and it is in that effort that it stumbles. Modes of inhabiting is the third one. Modes of inhabiting invites the exploration of what Donna Haraway describes as naturkulturos, which are intricate material collaborations that resist the anthropocentric and Cartesian habits that separate culture and nature. These symbiotic forms can be manifested through food, fishing, agriculture, migration, music, design, and architecture. They are also the ground from which we can start for the development of public policies, legislation, and sustainability. The voices of the river is the last one. In The Natural Contract, Michel Serres describes how the earth expresses itself in the form of forces, links, and interactions. Voices of the River is an exploration of the rhythms, sounds, and images that emerge from the river basins when understood as comprehensive systems of mirrored interactions. It provides a sensible way in which affections and bonds materialize when exchanging forces. it wonders about the calm of the river and its silences. How is the voice of the river? What does it say? How does it sound? How does it sing? Well, thanks a lot, and I'm not sure if Lisa, you're gonna say something to close.
No, I'm just really relieved that we managed to get through it before the Zoom meeting was going to kick us out. So just a thanks so much, Matthias, for inviting us. It's such a wonderful event, and it's such a shame not to be there in person, but thank you very much for including us.
Thank you guys for taking the time and presenting this. And as you showed us, we can always explore way more on the website, and which is steadily evolving. So we are tuned for new content and changing content.